we were arguing a proposal on the theme of becoming, and I decided that I would do something on censorship, which is very valid not only for Sri Lanka but also for the whole world, and it's a global phenomenon. And the concept of censorship has led to, in many instances, self-censorship, which is quite a phenomenon when you think that a lot of us, including most of the people I know, will keep their mouths shut when they see something really bad happening, something that they should concern themselves with, but yet, either due to fear or prudence or maybe a combination of both, people will choose. It's a choice that people make. It's a deliberate act. Will keep their mouths shut. Will not talk about it. Will not say anything about it. Will not write about it. So it's quite a phenomenon. So the question arises as to why the censor, him or herself, chooses to keep certain information away from the public. That's you and us. What for? So the first place to start would be that it's the censor's fear. The censor is afraid that what the censor is keeping out from the public ear or eye is harmful to that person's self-interest. That fear is used to make people keep quiet, and you end up with self-censorship. It's fear. So if somebody is afraid of criticism, then you have another dichotomy here, and I call it, these are working definitions, critique and criticism. And I will define it like this, not as dictionary definitions, but a working definition. And I call it like this. Criticism is just one that is somewhat different from critiquing because of intent. That's my opinion. And the intent is based on ill will. I would call it criticism. Critique, however, has two aspects to it, which might be negative, but mostly it's based on being positive. A positive contribution to the person being criticized. It helps the person to grow, to change. So it's not an attack, but something that is said to make that person grow. While criticism is basically a negative thing and is designed to cut that person down, and the very least to make that person shut up. So I started this project by a person called Walter Benjamin, who was a German Jewish art critic who lived during the Nazi era in Germany. And he wrote about a lot of things, including art. And he's very well known for a particular essay called Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction, and what it means to us, and art, with the availability of mechanical reproduction. For instance, he brought up the argument that whereas at one point you had to go to the museum to see a painting, let's say the Mona Lisa, now the Mona Lisa, because of multiple copies, can come into your home in the form of a postcard that your friend sent to you. So you no longer had to go to the museum, and when you tap that pad on the artwork. This person, of course, was hated by Hitler, was hunted all the way down to the Spanish-Portuguese border, and before the Gestapo could catch him, he just committed suicide. Which again brings to the question of critique and criticism. If that person, for having the courage to write on top about what he didn't like, had to take his life because his opinion was considered dangerous to somebody, that's a very high price to pay. And I think the power of that statement will be very, very visible to us in Sri Lanka today. And I think globally also. That's enormous power which kills somebody or forces somebody to take their own life just because they had an opinion on something. Which brings us to censorship. So I'll come back to criticism and critique. If you're looking at art, Are you making an aesthetic evaluation? Let me try to make that clear. If I'm criticizing a painting or I'm critiquing a painting, I'll use the same analogy because it's a little bit easier. Are you evaluating the painting? It's a criticism or critique of the painting that you're actually doing. Are you trying to say something to the artist which makes the artist grow, change, progress in that person's work? Or are you just dismissing the person where that person maybe even gives up painting? And on what basis are you making those judgments? Because you're making a choice, a deliberate choice. So coming back to criticism, is this criticism valid? Is it based on aesthetic considerations? Or let's say, will somebody like my painting because he knew me for 15 years? That person is trying to be supportive of me. This is really good. And that person might not be actually giving me an actually valid aesthetic criticism. He's trying to be supportive of me. So there's a problem there also. Because the problem is I will not grow from that. I will not change from that. He's simply being supportive. The other thing I would say is, let's say that this issue has come up over and over again. On what basis do we look at art? I wonder, how do we look at art? How do I look at art? I want to know how I look at other people's art. How do I know other people are looking at my work or their work or evaluating? Is it an aesthetic criticism? Is it critique? If you give, because there are language games involved, there's a dichotomy here also, especially abstract art, non-representational art, will be given the title untitled. Then it makes me wonder, what does the title do? I think what the title does, this is my opinion, it gives a particular prism, particular lens for the beholder to look at the work of art. For example, if I call this black lines, you say, okay, but what if I call this censorship? I have changed the entire meaning of this work of art by simply changing the title. So then I call it a language game. I'm playing a game here.